guys. Okay, so I am making the video as promised. So the way that we do the homework is you have your textbook ready to go, you have your notebook or workbook ready to go. Okay, and the same way the textbook is outlined for the most part, that's how your notes are also going to be outlined. So for example, over here, it kind of it tells you the definition of science, and it just introduces the module. And when you turn over here to your notebook, then you'll see that the same thing happens. Okay, you have the first thing is your science definition to go with your first module. Okay, so here's your science, and here is your science definition. Okay, then after that, they put all the vocabulary at the same place. So you will have to kind of look through it to get to that. But over here, so you'll have the papyrus, which is that paper that was made from a plant that the Egyptians used. But if you turn the page over here as well, then you will see this. You will see the earliest science, okay, and you will see ancient times. So this is where they're starting you off, okay? So this is just introducing, like, we're going to learn about science. It's going to be fun. Then over here, it's your introduction to what we're about to learn right now. So this is the earliest science, ancient times BC. So when you are writing in here, okay, you are going to pretty much summarize this. So it tells you the best way to study how science works today is to learn about how it has developed through history. That's because the history of science will reveal how science should and should not be practiced. We will also learn where it is headed in modern times. So we will use this module to travel through time and observe the history of human scientific inquiry. That will allow you to better understand what science is and what it is not. First, let's travel way, way back to some of the earliest historical records. So based on that, it says we're going to learn about the history of science. We're going to learn about modern science. So you summarize that in your own words right here. Okay, now we actually get into it. Okay, so they told us this is what we're learning about. And that was the introduction to it. And then now we're going to actually get into it. And if you look right here, it tells you the earliest science, okay? Ancient times, Egypt. So it's this part that we're doing, but it's this topic, the earliest science, ancient times 600 BC, but it's specifically for Egypt. So here's Egypt. We read all about Egypt, okay? And it says in the right here in parentheses, make sure you include a couple of sentences about Imhotep and what he is known for, okay? Okay, so you read all about Egypt, and then you kind of just try to summarize what you read. And what I put here was Imhotep was a good doctor that people traveled many miles to see. Okay, and then I put to the Egyptian doctors created papyrus and started writing down and sharing medical treatments that worked. Okay, so that's what they contributed. Then you come over here, and if you turn the page, you'll get to other cultures. And if you look here, okay, we're still on the same thing. We're the earliest sciences. Oh, let me see. The earliest sciences, ancient times, 600 BC, but then it's specifically other cultures. And right here it says other cultures. So then we read that, and then in your own words, a sentence or two. When they're little like this, then you just do 1 or 2 sentences. When they're like this, I would like to see about 3 sentences would be good, or at least 2, not just 1, okay? But yeah, so then you read this about the other cultures, you go ahead and put that there, okay? And then you turn to the next page. Now, the on your own questions. After you've read so far, at the beginning, it might take a while to kind of understand what they're asking you and how to answer this. So if you're having a hard time answering the on your own question in your workbook, just go to the back of your module in your textbook, okay? Come here, and it says answers to the on your own questions, okay? So this one this on your own question right here says, although the ancient Egyptians had reasonably advanced medical practices for their times, and although there were many inventions that revolutionized life in the ancient world, most historians of science do not think of Egyptian doctors as scientists. Why? Hint, look at the entire definition of science. So if you want to figure it out yourself, you can either go back in your notes or go back in your textbook and you can look at the definition of science, okay? And try to figure it out. But if you look at your definition, you think about it and you're like, I really don't know, then just come here to the answers till you're on your own question. Because it's not a got you, it's just to make you think. So if you try and you still can't figure it out, then you can come here and this is the first on your own question and the answer. So it says if you look, well, it doesn't say the question, it just gives you the answer and a bunch of information. So it says if you look at the definition of science, it contains two parts. Science consists of collecting facts, but it also consists of using those facts to explain the world around us. The Egyptian doctors and inventors of the ancient world collected lots of facts, but they did not use them to explain the world around them, okay? So they knew, for example, that something in the bread was curing, the infections in people, but they didn't know that it was penicillin. So because they never looked more into it to figure it out and to just kind of come up with laws of science, okay? Okay, so that's that. And then, so we would go ahead and do the on your own. And remember, I said that the history of science timeline we will not be doing because all we're doing there is kind of writing what the scientists did, but we're already going to do that in our homework, okay? So we don't have to do that. Okay, so over here, okay, this is the next one, and it says true scientists begin to emerge, okay? And in your notebook it says 3 Greek scientists, 2 more Greek scientists, and a hypothesis. So for this one, okay, it says that you can write down any questions or thoughts that you might that you have as you're reading, and you might want to include a sentence or two on how to state a good hypothesis. So this is where you kind of have to go through your books, because even though it says, most of the time it does go directly in order. If you look at this one, okay, the how to state a good hypothesis doesn't really come until you get 2 full pages later, right? So we're here and we haven't read this yet. And then, but if you go all the way to page 8, this is where it really tells you how to come up with a good hypothesis. So over here, that's all you have to do. You just have to say how to come up with a good hypothesis, and any things that you think are interesting or stuff like that. And then we're going to turn our notebook and go to the next page, okay? And then this is where we start to kind of go through each one of the scientists and write a little bit about them. So that's why we don't need the timeline, because the timeline was just going to make us do this again. Okay, so over here it says, if you look at your textbook, it has all the scientists' names in blue, highlighted in blue. So over here, you would just kind of put in your notebook, the same way they did for Imhotep. You just put the time that he was alive, okay? You put a little bit about him, and then that's it. Like I put for Thales, he figured out the solar eclipse. Anaximander studied evolution, okay? Anaximenes, he came up with the concept of atoms, okay? So that's all. You just put, it just can be one sentence about what they came up with, okay? And so we have these 3 here, and then we have our 4th scientist, and then our 5th one, and then people were very confused because they didn't know who came next. So the reason that I know that Aristotle came next is because if you turn the page, okay, and you do here we are with the hypothesis page, right? So remember, you always have to go back to your notes and write what a good hypothesis would be, and just like 1 sentence, maybe 2 is perfect for that page. And the page I'm talking about is this one, okay? So I haven't written in my book what makes a good hypothesis, but I did write something about just a thought I had, something that I thought was important. Okay, so over here, okay, we finished Democritus, and we have him after going through all of that. But then everybody was kind of like, well, what about this last person? How do we know who it is? And what I'm going to show you is that we read all of this, and then we got to Aristotle right over here. Okay, so that's Aristotle. He's the next one. So that's why we know that he's the next one, even though it's far away, because we have all of these things. We have what to do for the lab report. We have how to do a hypothesis, and we have the experiment. So it kind of like puts all of this information in between who the next scientist is. But you know it's the next scientist because if you go into your workbook and you see where the next scientist starts, they kind of put some stuff here for Aristotle, but but this is good for you to write in as well, okay? Because you also want to, as you're reading, write your own thoughts. So Aristotle definitely goes there. These are all the scientists, okay? And yeah, so then we continue from there. So let me see what we've done so far. Okay, so over here it goes to what to do. Okay, so after we write in all of our scientists here, then we turn the page and we read this hypothesis thing. The lab report is just kind of an introduction on how to write lab reports. And then it has this section here called Explore More. Okay, you're going to see these sections throughout the book. These are not something that you have to do at home. You can do them if you feel like it. If you think they're simple enough and they might be fun to do, go ahead and do them. If you don't think so, you're like, we're fine, we don't need to do it, then don't do it, okay? So this Explore More one with the hot and cold water, we did in class, okay? And I did this one in class because I just thought it would be a fun one to do, and it was simple enough, okay? So if you want to do them, you can. You don't have to. So if you want to skip all the Explore Mores, unless we do them in class, if we do them in class, I would like you to copy them down just like we did. But if they're at home and we didn't do these in class, then you can leave that completely blank, okay? So then we'll move on to the next one, okay? It says right here, spontaneous generation, okay? So this is a definition. You don't have to write it in your own words. Spontaneous, you just write it word for word, the definition, okay? And then again, we're going to go and it's going to start off telling us there's more scientists that we're going to learn about. So here's Archimedes and here is Ptolemy, okay? So we just write when did they live? What did they do? Okay? And then he came out with the geocentric, well, no, actually, who was it that did that? Yeah, so Ptolemy. So if you come here, right, it talks about Ptolemy. And it says Ptolemy studied the heavens and came up with the first attempt to complete the description of the planets and stars. So he assumed that the Earth was at the center, and we know that that's incorrect now, but he was the first to even attempt it. So he was still pretty popular and pretty, everybody thought of him as a really smart guy. But then that was an idea he had that was wrong, okay? So then after you read about Ptolemy, then you can do the summarize the geocentric system, which is the where the Earth is in the middle, that Ptolemy came up with, okay? So now on your own you can do that, okay? So some of these are going to be based on the experiment, okay? We just did the experiment on Wednesday. We did all of our labs. So over here you have to you have to answer those based on our experiment, and you can go to the lab portion of your notebook and kind of see what did you write, and come up with your own conclusion here on your own questions, because those are just about the experiment, okay? And remember that if you need some help, even for those, if you just go to the back of your module, then you will find right here, okay? This is a good explanation of the experiment so that you'll be able to answer your question, on your own question, okay? So let's see what we're on now. Okay. We're on the next on your own question. So you keep reading. Okay, here's the next on your own question, okay? And we read about, okay, it asks us about Albert Einstein, okay? And it says, give us another example. Name another scientist that also made a mistake with, you know, when he was incorrect with some of his ideas. And Aristotle's spontaneous generation was not correct. We know that now because he saw meat inside of, he just saw maggots kind of come out of the meat, and he thought, oh, wow, you know, the meat is dead, the piece of meat is not alive, but out of nowhere, these alive creatures form. So then life can come from non-life. And then later they found out, right, that the maggots came from the eggs that flies were laying on the meat. So that's why I put that one in there, okay? Then you read about the alchemist, and you fill in that part at the bottom of page 29 in your notebook. And then we keep reading. That's our experiment that we did in class. Oh, and I'm going to post that picture. So I'll be posting that today. And then because we had to leave it overnight, and so I went in yesterday and took a picture. Okay, and okay, so then, yeah, you finish up the stuff about the alchemist, okay? And then we go to other cultures, and this is where, you know, they start talking about the Arabics and the Chinese and what they were doing, we keep going, and then over here on page 15 in our textbook right here, we learn about the Crab Nebula, which is pretty cool. And then we start again with our blue scientists, and see, we're going through it again. That's the same thing we would do in a timeline. That's why I didn't think it was necessary. So you just go through the scientists, you read about them, you fill in a little bit about them, okay? Nicholas de Cusa is our last one, and then it says, explain why it is important to document scientific data. So you go ahead and fill that in on your own. And remember, the on your own questions, if you can't come up with your own answers, they are in the back of the module. So you don't have to if you can't, okay? But try to start doing it on your own. If for this module you just need to get help, that's fine. But throughout the semester, I do want you guys to start kind of working on your own, okay? And trying to figure it out on your own. But we can work on that little by little, okay? So, okay, so here we read about Galileo. And if you look at page 34 on your notebook, they're talking about Galileo. It's on your own question, okay, right here, okay? Then we keep reading, and we learn about a bunch of other, you know, over here, this one starts over here actually. After Nicholas de Cusa, then we come here to page 35 in our notebook, and 17 in our textbook, and we see that that's when Nicholas Copernicus is there, and so we start doing the same thing, going through all of our scientists and writing a little bit about them, okay? Let's see, we have him, we have, okay, and then here's the era of Newton. So we start talking about Newton, but then there is, oh, here's the explore more. Okay, so the explore more, like I said, you don't have to do this. We did that one just because it was pretty easy. Okay, we just had a cardstock, water, and a cup. So It was pretty easy, so me and my children did it, but you don't have to if you don't want to. So then this explore more area here can stay blank because you don't have to do that. That's optional. If you do it, then you can write it in there. Okay. Okay, so over here it starts talking about Sir Isaac Newton, about this guy Robert Boyle, and Antony van Leeuwenhoek. And then we go ahead and do the on your own question. Okay. Then we talk about the Enlightenment, okay, and the Industrial Revolution. And you fill that in. You read about it here, okay, and then you can fill in this on your own question, or well, actually, this right here, the Enlightenment page. If you need help with the on your own question, go to the back of the module, and then this, you read this, and you're just answering these questions. It says, as you read, summarize what you learned about the terms Enlightenment and Industrial Revolution in the spaces below indicated. Write 2 things you learn about each scientist you read about in the chart provided. Okay, so that's this. Those are these charts that we're filling out. Okay, it's just telling you what's going to happen next. And remember to add them to your timeline. We're not doing that. And then finally, complete the explore more activity. So you don't have to do that. That's all optional. But here it says summarize what the term enlightenment describes. Why is it in quotation marks? Okay, so you read about it, you answer this question here. Okay, go, move along, and we have Carolus. Okay, so, and then we're just doing the same thing, okay? We're writing 2 facts about each one of these. What did we do? And as you can see, the explore more here is completely empty because we didn't do this one, okay? So we didn't do one of the explore mores here, okay? Okay, and that's the explore more that we didn't do. And then we have Charles Darwin, and we keep going, 2 facts, we keep adding things about them. We do read and do some more about these guys. The on your own question about Louis Pasteur, and remember, you can always go to the back, so don't feel like you have to do that. Okay, after the on your own questions, we turn and we go to the next scientist. So this is Max right here. Right here's Max, and you just go through all of these. Okay, fill those in. And then here, summarize the 3 major points you learned in this module. It tells you what they are. So if you just go to the back of it on page 26, these are your 3 facts, your 3 major points that you learned. So you just go ahead and fill those in right here, okay? And then after that, you are done, okay? So, and then over here, on page 43 where it says creation connection, you can write any thoughts, questions, something that was confusing, and then you bring that to class when we're going over the module so that you can, so that we can go over it even more. We can talk about things that were interesting and just have class discussions, okay? So questions, thoughts, anything that you enjoyed, go there, okay? And then is your study guide, which is going to be next week. So we don't have to do this right now. And then the last thing that we have to go over is our labs. So we did labs in class, okay? These are our labs. And we're actually right here after the on your own questions. If you look here on page 29, it gives us our first lab report, okay? So I want this lab report to be copied into our lab report, our first lab report for this week. So you just have to copy it in there. You don't have to pick one and do your own just quite yet. So this we already filled out when we were doing the ping pong balls, and this one as well, okay? We were supposed to fill all of that out, your conclusions, everything. We did that in class. And then the next experiment, we did the front page, okay? and we did up to step 4. So I will open this one. So we did up to step 4 over here. And then we are going to do, we're going to finish up this one and the conclusions. And I'm just going to post what happened overnight. So it says, note the colors of the pennies after the pennies were exposed to salt and air overnight. Okay, so we can write what we think happened. Okay, if you have a hard time doing your conclusions for the lab, okay, right here it tells you what happened. Well, this one's not for the second ones, but if you come here, it also does tell you, which is kind of something that I was like, oh, they're gonna know what's happening before we do the lab, but it's fine. Okay, so over here, okay, is the experiment. And if you come here, then it will go over on page 14 kind of what happened. So, so in the second part of the experiment, you expose pennies to salt and water. See, so this is telling you what happened in the experiment. So I will post the picture, but if you don't know how to put it in your own words, it does say it right here. And that's how the book really works. If there's an experiment, when it tells you here's the experiment that you're going to do in your textbook, it's either if the experiment's smaller, then, you know, right after the experiment, whether it's on the same page or behind it, it will explain in detail what just happened. So you can use that as well to fill in your conclusion right here, okay? And then you can use the picture that I'm going to send to fill in this part right here, okay? And then if you go to the back on page 413, right after you're done with these labs, then here's your formal lab report. And like I said, the first one is just a copy one, okay? So that is this one right here. This is the one, wait, that's not the one. It's at the back. It's in the back of our textbook. So that's just the labs, but the back of the textbook has our first experiment. There it goes. Okay, it has our first sample lab. Okay, so we are just going to take this and word for word copy it. So experiment title, density in nature. Okay, name, that's where you put your name. Date, you put the date we did it, which was Wednesday. So what was Wednesday? It was, I don't know. Wednesday was the 10th. So you put Wednesday the 10th, and then you just put September 10th, 2025. And then here's the introduction. Here's the introduction. Here's the materials and procedure. Here is the space for materials and procedure, okay? And they gave you a lot of space because they give you so much space here because you can make a drawing if you want to, okay? If you want to. For this first one, I do want you to make the drawing, okay? But going forward, you don't have to. But since this one's just copy, then we're going to make it. Okay, and then in the back of this lab, okay, it says data and results and conclusion. And here it says results, and here it says conclusion. So you just write those in, okay? And this will kind of get your mind to where you're just copying it, but you're kind of getting an idea of how these work, okay? Now, when you're done doing all of the things that I just went over, then you will scan the pages that you just did, okay? So you'll scan all of these pages in your notes, okay? You can scan them all. And after you scan all of these pages that you've written in, okay, from the first module, then you will go ahead and you will go ahead and upload them into Google Classroom, and you can put homework or notes, you can call it. So name it homework or notes, and then when you're putting in your labs, okay, you can call that labs. And if you want to do labs all together plus your lab report, then you just put labs, and you can just scan all of these, okay, and then just call that one labs, okay? But do a different one for homework and a different one for labs, okay? And that is pretty much all I have to go over with you guys. If you have any more questions, then please let me know. Message me on Slack. I'm always able and willing to help, okay? Thank you guys. Bye.